Okay, post Bargel. Post Bell Jar, I'm contemplating if I should just speed run all of the classics on me and my roommate's library shelves. And honestly, it sounds fun. So I think that that might be what we're going to do, just a speed run of all of the classics so I can stop feeling bad that I haven't read them and offer more cutting edge um, critiques. All right, next up on the list of books I am going blind into um, is Catch 22 by Joseph Keller. The things I know about this book. No, that's Lord of the Flies. The first thing was going to be boys kill each other, but that's wrong. That's the wrong book. Okay, so the second thing was also going to be men who like this book and think it's like a creative work of literature are considered by the internet women as a red flag. But I also think that point might be Lord of the Flies. So that leads us to our last two. I know it's supposed to be funny because I read the back and they said it was really funny. So that's one. And then it inspired a phrase that we now all say. You catch 22. You do it and you're damned. You don't do it and you're damned. So, and there's this little man doing the hokey pokey on the front. That's a good sign. See, it's already funny. I wasn't expecting it to be a funny book, but that might have been because I was thinking of Lord of the Flies. So, who knows these things? And let's get through it. I think this will take me less than 2 hours. And, oh, never mind. I saw French, but I thought it said Nigerian, but it did not. So, alright. Start the timer. Like, not that this book is perfect by any means, but it does have a good example that I can show you of kind of what I was talking about with that I was missing in the bell jar. And this is a very ironic scene, but so he goes, handsome Indian, talks about colonialism and like geo extraction and displacement, and then he says, okay, so this is the speaker, the chief, saying, racial prejudice is a terrible thing, Yossarian. It really is. It's a terrible thing to treat a decent, loyal Indian like a beep, 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 or beep. Chief White, half oat, nodded slowly with conviction. And like, is it perfect? No. Is it white man funny? Yes. But does it also sort of signify internalized racism and like sort of how internally within minority groups there's a tendency to sort of exhibit anti-blackness as a way to push yourself higher up the social ladder by differing yourself from the true quote-unquote lowest of the low. Yeah. Was I expecting that from that page? No. And so yeah, I just feel like that's important to think about. Literally, this is so funny. Hupple thrust his jaw out defiantly to let Hungry Joe know he couldn't be pushed around, and then did exactly as he had been told. After this point, I just kind of kept reading. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to finish the book, but I did enjoy getting to at least experience the beginning of it. Sort of against my own expectations, I found myself really enjoying it. And again, my expectations were to be reading Lord of the Flies. So it was just like a pleasant surprise. I thought there was some, at least the beginnings of good commentary.
I liked the acknowledgement of the attempt to gain proximity to whiteness through socially disparaging what you view as lower minority groups. And I think it's an interesting consideration to imagine proximity to whiteness as the ability to display racism. Sort of inherently in white supremacy and the acceptance of white supremacy is the normalization of racism and like the active practice of it, at least in the view of this scene. And so I find it curious that psychology of I would prefer to be taking part in social disparagement, that idea that it's not the racism that's the problem, it's the experience of the racism, a desire to be in the in-group that subjugates rather than to eradicate subjugation altogether. And I think, too, that's sort of displayed in the homophobia and transphobia within, of my experience, I can only speak of the Black community. But there's an interesting layer there in making that comparison because I believe that homophobia and transphobia stems from the belief that others exhibiting that behavior sort of challenges something internal that's repressed. So the greatest homophobes, there is that sort of stereotype that homophobes are gay, but when really unpacked, it is something I believe because A, they spend all of their time considering homosexuality in sort of a fervent obsession, and B, I believe it's that feeling of I can't live out my truth, so why can you? And if you're able to, my entire internal philosophy falls apart. And so I'm curious if there could be a part of that within internalized racism, that idea that if you aren't inferior, then what have I been accepting this abuse and fighting my way up the ladder for? Perhaps the entire idea of race falls apart if someone isn't subjugated. And so then it also pushes me to question why we aren't willingly accepting the downfall of these social ideas such as race, proper sexual relations, and gender. But I think the answer within that one is easily explainable because those setups provide benefits, financial, social, career, travel-wise, to the people at the top. Without gender, there can be no misogyny, there can be no elevation of the male race, and all of the suffering that the male gender experiences at the hands of patriarchy is invalid. And I think for some people that just sort of leaves behind a complete lack of identity, especially if your personal identity has been rooted in a gendered conception of your purpose and your role and of strength. And so sort of considering that with race, perhaps the desire to not abolish the entire social system of ranking and racism is because minorities convinced by the system then spend their lives in pursuit of the elite peaceful life at the top. However, it's just an illusion because no matter what, the way that racism works is even if you're in the in-group, you're considered the best of the inferiors, never the equal of the elites. And I think this sort of ideology applies to a lot of things, like even in our financial systems, our economic systems. Like of capitalism, people accept doing the grunt work, being utilized for labor, and the domination of other nations and other continents and the abuse of other people for our own ease. Because A, they don't want to be in the group of the exported labor suffering at the hands of convenience. They want to partake in convenience because it reminds them of the elites and allows them to live that illusion. And B, there's that popularized idea that due to the way sort of capitalist indoctrination works, and not saying like, oh, raw, capitalism, raw, but due to the way that our education works, we believe that our chances of becoming a billionaire are much higher than they actually are, when in reality, people have started to point out we're always closer to the man on the street than we are to the top 1%. After demanding cake, I never came back. So I guess this video will be continued another day. But thank you guys for joining me and listening to sort of my ramblings. I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.